What is up, guys? It is the Coach's Corner. Myself, my guy, Coach Fred, with me. This is a two-parter week. We're going to start having these moving forward every once in a while. The off season is going to be strictly coaching interviews, and we're going to make this a legit coaching corner, get a bunch of different perspectives from across the FBS and FCS. We had a great chance to talk to Coach Lawrence Dawsey on Tuesday before App State's big game. They pulled out that win in impressive fashion on earlier this week, but Coach Fred, it was an insane week of football, but we both we can look on it finally because we both predicted probably the biggest upset on the show today. Tennessee pulling off a big win over Alabama, 52-49. We had like over 1,000 yards, 100 plus points put on the board. Coach, what were your takeaways from Tennessee's huge win where they threw the field goal post in the river?
And I think that alone was insane. Um, the like you said, man, just the amount of offense that they can generate and how quick they can do it, and they play a little defense when they need to. But everybody's talking about Hooker. Everybody's talking about him, and rightfully so. But Hyatt is on the scene now, and if he wasn't before, he's definitely what's the Bolitnikov? He's definitely in the talk of that right now. I mean, that was 6 for 207 for 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's video game. That's like you're only throwing to him, but they didn't only throw to him; they threw to other receivers as well. My biggest takeaway is that they found something in Mr. Hyatt that they may not have shown before in this magnitude. That is the way he blew up on that Saturday.
The crazy part for me is that Hyatt was the backup wide receiver coming in because if you remember, Tillman was out with injury. Tillman's their number one wide receiver and has been all season. And the guy who is not used to being number one steps up and goes for 5 touchdowns against. You can say what you want. I think at this point it's safe to say one of the best defensive minds in college football right now in Nick Saban. I mean, you put Kirby Smart, Brent Venables, whoever you want else, Dave Aranda possibly in that conversation, but it's Nick Saban and Hooker, 385, 5 touchdowns. But for me, Coach, it was the resiliency of Tennessee because being an SEC guy, being an Auburn alum, I've seen what it takes to beat Alabama, and it's you got to play damn near perfect football for 60 minutes. And Tennessee didn't play perfect football. They had turnovers, they had missed opportunities. Both teams had the penalty bug, and it was just every time I thought Tennessee was going to give the game away, because I've seen this story. You have a high scoring offensive team, they go in, and a crucial turnover costs them the game. But then it was the missed field goal by Alabama at the end, and then it was when it came down to it, Hendon Hooker walked them right down the field, put them in position to win. But I want to give the coaching staff a round of applause and the team's morale because Tennessee could have rolled over when things looked like they were potentially getting out of hand in the middle of this game.
Yep, it could have been, like you said, it could have been that situation of here we go again, because that has happened. You jump out to this huge lead and everybody's, high five and smiling, sipping Gatorade. And then next thing you know, bing, bing, bing. Oh, man, we're in a fight now. And they were able to turn it back on, like you said, and make timely plays. And, that takes a lot to do in the moment, especially versus in Alabama, because you know who they are. And like you said, just at the moment you thought they caught up with Tennessee and about to overtake them, Tennessee makes a play. And that was, that's tipping the hat to Coach Heupel and his staff, man, to keep those kids going.
And for Alabama, in your two favorite stats on this show, Alabama had a better third down percentage, if I'm not mistaken. They had more first downs. They had more total yards. They won the time of possession by almost like 20 minutes, it felt like.
Yep.
But coach, and they won the turnover battle. When
Yep.
you go back and they call it a quote unquote check mark game, you won all the check marks except for one, and that was 17 penalties for 130 yards. As a coaching, being on a coaching staff, coach, when you go into the locker room and y'all get back on Sunday night for film study and you see 17 penalties for 130, what is the message for the team? And how do you even start addressing on cleaning that up?
You start with the big ones and then you work your way down. You start with those big 15-yarders. You start with the unnecessary ones after that. And there were some that was quite unnecessary. if you go back and you look. But, you hit it on the head, man. They were 17 for 130. Tennessee was 6 for 39. That's a huge disparity, man, when you're talking about free yardage, opportunities to stay on the field, opportunities to get yourself in scoring position. And then, the one big one took Alabama potentially out of scoring position. So, those things, when you get that sheet at the end of the day and you look at it, that's the one that you circle because, like you said, they won everything else but that and the scoreboard.
And that at the end of the day, that's the one that matters. And something that happened after the game that I want to get your opinion on. The uniqueness of this show is that we get an active coach's perspective on this. And it's something that could have, I don't remember the last time a SWAC school stormed the field off the top of my head, but it's been a while. I feel like, but Tennessee's fans storm the field. They take the field goal post, of course, but now we have an Alabama player who is potentially facing legal ramifications for some of his actions after the game, apparently assaulting a fan, maybe even a second one, according to the videos and the reports. Coach, let's make this a two-parter. One, how do you feel about storming the field? Because I understand it's passion and it's the fans, and we all know what it is being a college student. But two, how do you prepare your team for a moment? Do you guys know, like, if you're going in number one ranked and you're like, listen, if they beat us, this is a possibility, and here's how you guys need to conduct yourselves on this field? Or is there any way to prepare for that moment?
You just talk to them. For us on a smaller scale, last year we had a team storm the field at their place, of course, and you kind of can sense that's coming, and you kind of tell, as coach will get on, tell all the coaches on the headset, hey, look, this is what we got to do. Talk to them before it ticks. In our situation was kind of like Alabama's situation. There's no information being said because it's in the minute, it's in the second. A walk-off field goal. You hope that you can trust your kids, but then we are talking about teenagers, passion. Everybody fought hard in that game. Alabama fought to get back in that game, so I'm sure emotions were running high. I just, I hope that kid doesn't have to face anything in that situation. Maybe some community service, something like that. But in that situation, to punish a kid, because you got to understand, emotions play a huge part in this game that we coach and we play. And here you are in this situation, and who knows what was said? It's tongue in cheek. He say, she say. I'm sure that wasn't a hey, great game type of conversation. That prompted any of that. It's just it's a terrible situation. It's great for college football, but it becomes dangerous for the kids, the coaches, and the whole nine. Because you got to remember now, out of everybody Alabama had on that sideline, there's only one person that had authority figures with them, and that was the head coach.
Yeah. It could be a dangerous situation, and I agree with you. Listen, I love film storming. I think it's what makes college football so amazing is that you have a bunch of people who are tied to the university, and that's what separates it from professional football. There's very few people who have played or been a part of the Patriots organization, but there's millions of people who have been a part of Alcorn State University, been a part of Auburn University, Tennessee University. So you have a different connection, but also, man, the message to the fans have to be just be a good like you don't have to run like you're forgetting, like, you won't train like that dude right there is not going to take anything that you say, especially when you run up to him and cuss and say whatever you did. Like, just keep your head, like, storm the field respectfully. If you're going to do it, don't put a kid in a position to lose his whole career because you were drunk and wanted to get on the field and go say something to the star player. But I had to ask your opinion on that, coach, being an active coach and possibly having to deal with that situation. But we had another top 10 matchup, and this one we got right as well. And I think we both saw this coming. We thought we definitely thought Penn State didn't stand a great chance in this one, but Michigan 41-17, and the rushing game, coach, was the difference. 418 yards on the ground, 8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. What were your big takeaways from this one?
Man, Michigan's running attack is for real. And I think it's been that over the past couple of years for Coach Harbaugh, when he has them running. has the program rolling. The only thing that worries me about them going forward, and I'm sure it's probably in the coach's room as well, when someone decides to stop the run game and completely sell out to stop it, are they going to be able to, with JJ, win a game? They didn't have to that week, but going forward, are they going to be able to win a game through the air? Because, let's just be honest, defensive coordinators are not going to let you get two running backs off for over 100 yards and umpteen million touchdowns in a game. They're not going to do it, even if they have to put all 11 in that box. So the huge takeaway is that, man, those guys up front moved Penn State around like they weren't there. And we all know Penn State's a top 10 program as they were there. But the way Michigan made it look in the trenches was just, man, that was impressive. That was impressive.
They dominated both lines of scrimmage too, because they really and truly slowed down the Penn State rushing attack with Singleton. They didn't have a guy hit 80 yards rushing on the other side, and both quarterbacks looked atrocious. This guy, all three quarterbacks on both sides, did not have a great game. And you're right. I think that's what Michigan last year was, a playoff program, but they weren't a national championship contender, because once they hit the Georgias, the Alabamas in the playoffs, and they put 8 in the box, you better get something through the air. And we saw Georgia, what was it, 31-0, 31-3, something like that last year. They put it on Michigan.
Yep.
And yeah, but Corum is a guy who a lot of people were giving him Heisman consideration coming into the year, and he's having just an outstanding year. And for Dylan Edwards to have a breakout game as well, it's also just, you got to give Harbaugh credit. The critique of him has been quarterback development. I think that's still there. McCarthy probably should have played better, but it's, man, the way he recruits offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, and even secondary. Their secondary looks great. They got some real athletes on the back end of the defense. It's just, what could Michigan be if they had that game-changing quarterback? If let's not even say a Bryce Young, but just a mid-tier quarterback that's like top 20, top 25 in college football, like a Jalen Daniels from Kansas when he's healthy, or someone like that. This Michigan team would be a horrific matchup for everyone.
Dangerous. If they had a quarterback like that could actually a dual threat type guy. Because like you said, with Quorum and looking at those numbers, and he wasn't even the big guy. Edwards comes in and he's averaging 10 yards a clip. So imagine the aspect of adding a running quarterback that can run it decent. Like you said, not even a home run hitter, just somebody that could run it decent. Or like you said, the play action game for them should be, just stupid, because you got two backs back there that can go absolutely crazy at any point. But it's just got to be solid play from from your trigger guy. And like you said, he hadn't been able to get that. And at some point, it's going to show up again for him. But can he get him to a point to where he can do just enough to help him win it? So I think that's going to be one of the big takeaways going forward for them. 145 yards, 17 or 24 is not going to get it. Not going to get it. And that's being nice.
Yeah, especially in the big games. You could probably maybe get through the Big Ten. I think Ohio State's probably their biggest game. Is just, if you can stop the run, Michigan's beatable. But the question also becomes, Coach, right now with the way that O-line's playing, there might not be many teams that are going to be able to even stop that run at all, and that's going to be the scary part. But for Penn State, you still got all your goals in front of you. Michigan could easily slip up somewhere, and you're still playing for a New Year's Six and things like that. Do you think they stick with the quarterback change? Or do you think this just, man, you've lost this game. Clifford has all the experience, man. You just got to roll with him. Like, if you were on that coaching staff, how would you be kind of evaluating this potential quarterback battle?
Right now, that's a touchy subject. I'm sure in their coach's office, because you made that change. Now, I think whatever they did this week is going to take their team wherever it's going to go. Because now you can't play that game of where you come back and you pull him, and then you go right back with the starter. It's just not a good look for the rest of the team. So I think right now, if I'm in there and I have a vote, I mean, we got to go with the guy that brought us to the dance, so to speak, and we give it a little more. But there's a short leash on him to the point to where we don't lose the ball club, and we still give ourselves the option to be able to go back to the number 2 quarterback, to be able to go back to him at some point. But whatever you do right now, whatever they did this week, you got to stand on it and be right behind it 110% so that the rest of the team does the same thing.
Completely agree with that, coach. But to the FCS level, a big win for the Jackrabbits here. 6-1 now, ranked the number 1 team in the country this week for the first time in program history. Their third straight win over the Bison. Man, I just had a feeling. And also, coach, I don't know if you remember my score prediction on
Yeah.
this game. 23-21, South Dakota State hit it on the money with this one. I feel really good about that. I was G came up to me at the game last weekend and was like, "Hey, did you check that score for the North Dakota State game?" I was like, "Nah." He was like, "Yeah, it was right on the money." And I've been bragging all week about it. But coach, South Dakota State runs for over 200 yards on the Bison front. The Yankee brothers did their thing in the receiving game. How did the Jacks pull off this comeback win?
This is another game, man. When you look at these numbers, they're pretty even. You know, when you look at them, they're pretty even as far as total yards, separated by 4 or 5 yards. But when you get to the passing situation, like you said, the brothers did their thing, and I think that was a situation where they actually won the game, 227 to 152, and they ran it good. You know, they did just enough, man. And even with the turnover, my prediction blew up in smoke uh, with the last field goal. But I mean that's a heck of a ball game that may roll itself back around again uh, here in the postseason.
Definitely could. I would love to see this rematch in Frisco, game that I'll probably be at. But, I thought South Dakota State, they allowed their first team to rush for over 100 yards, but it was still, man, take away just a handful of explosive plays that they've really dominated in the run game. That front seven played really well. They held Lipke, who was a Payton candidate, coming into 58 yards, less
Right.
than 4 yards per carry. Only one touchdown came on as just a scamper by Cam Miller. But man, Isaiah Davis is that guy. That kid is so special for his career, coach. He's averaging over like 8 yards per carry over like 3 years, which is, I don't know how you keep up that pace, especially playing in the conference that he does. But 114 the touchdown, and then Amir Johnson as well had a big game as his backup, 89 for a touchdown. I just thought it was, and I said this coming in, I thought this was going to be the difference in the game. I just feel like at the line of scrimmage, South Dakota State outplayed North Dakota State. And if you win at the point of attack, it's really hard. It's really hard to lose. And also the third downs, too. South Dakota State consistently kept themselves in third and shorts. And North Dakota State, being a run first team, when you get in those third and longs, things can get a little bit difficult for you to move the football.
And it goes back to old school football, like you said, back in the day. But first, let me tip my hat. You called it. Um, you called that one. But the old Nebraska teams of old, if they were rolling, they were rolling. But if you could ever get up on them or get them behind the chains, you had a chance to get them off the field and do damage. And this is kind of what happened here, with their NFL prospect, who's a fullback, running back type, however you want to put it. He's still a load, and they were able to keep him under control. And I think, like you said, the point of attack, and then them being able to stretch the field. Uh, you know, I won't. If we pull them up again and we have them in our rotation, I'm all for them. I'm all for them.
I love it, and an upset that neither of us saw coming. I don't even think we even saw this coming at all, not even a glimpse. Idaho pulling off the upset over Montana, and Coach Eck is doing a hell of a job with that Vandals program. They forced 2 big turnovers against Lucas Johnson at the quarterback for the Grizz, and Giovanni McCoy.
McCoy.
I think right now he wins the Jerry Rice Award as the best freshman of the year. 286, 2 touchdowns, and man, Idaho finds a way to win on the road against Montana. Coach, how did the Vandals somehow get this done?
McCoy. I mean, like you said, man, going back and pulling some things up on video, it's hard to believe that he's as young as he is. And what he's doing there is keeping those guys believing. You know what I mean? And that's what what your trigger man's supposed to do. And rolling up almost 350 yards and almost 300 yards of that is on him. That is a huge weapon. Kind of like we talked about with Michigan. If you can count on that guy to give you 300 through the air or with his legs, just total offense coming from him, that's a huge boost for anything else you got going on, man. Because now that if nothing else, I can get yardage when needed through my quarterback, and my team's going to follow him.
And I don't think I've ever seen this. If I didn't watch this game and watch the film on it, I would just come in here and be like, "How did this happen?" So, Coach, Idaho averaged 1.2 yards per carry, and Montana averaged 1.9, and Idaho held the ball for 42 plus minutes
So that was
with
that.
52 rushing yards. How in the hell is that possible?
I don't know, man. That was like they held the ball for basically the whole freaking game. And then you go back and, like you said, you look and you're like, wait a minute, that's got to be a typo. That's got to be 520. They forgot to put the zero or something. There's no way it was 52. And it's like, and then it wasn't a turnover fest. It was just third down efficiency. I mean, they were 50% at third down, 10 yards of pass, and yet they held the ball for almost half the freaking ball game. Well, over half the ball
Yeah,
game.
almost 3 quarters.
Yeah, and you think about that when you put it in terms like you just said, they had it the whole first quarter, the whole second quarter, and then they came out and they let you play a little bit the middle through the third and the fourth. Basically what it was. I don't know if that'll ever come back again, and I don't know if anybody's ever, if anybody's talked about that. I hadn't heard anybody talk about that, but
It
that's
it makes no sense, and I think you have to give the defense of Idaho, as great as McCoy was, the defense was able to make some crucial turnovers, the interceptions happened in key moments, and then to hold Montana to 220 total yards for the game at home, do great on third down, and just they played opportunistic football all game long, and the fact that they're able to do this with a young team, with a redshirt freshman quarterback, with a head coach who's still newer in his tenure, it's just man, you got to give the coaching staff a lot of credit for having those young guys ready and for finding a way to let them gel so quickly in the system.
man. And then I'm gonna take it to a comedic stance. Uh, you're doing that in Idaho. I
Yeah.
mean, doing that in Idaho. I want to go sit down with those guys and ask them, what? Okay, tell me about your recruiting. Tell me about your recruiting pitch. What are you doing? How are you getting these kids to Idaho? I love French fries, but man, that's tough. I've always wondered how they recruited out there, and now they've gotten some real legit talent, which is interesting. You know, uh, Man, Idaho, it gets cold
Yeah.
out
That they got a USC transfer, former 4-star making plays, from a former Notre Dame transfer, 4-star making plays, and then the Giovanni McCoy beats out Jabori Gibbs, who is a former South Dakota State quarterback who was one of the MVFC newcomers of the year, and beat him out in a competition in an offense that Gibbs already played in because the head coach Eck was the OC at South Dakota State.
there. Yeah, that in itself is crazy because he has not a leg up, he's got two legs up on this kid, and so I mean, you gotta think that quarterback battle was something, to watch and enjoy, and then just to watch because it had to be even, and all of a sudden that kid just had to take it over, and it don't look like he's giving it back anytime soon.
Not even close. But coach, big week ahead of us. We got some big ranked matchups at both levels to talk about. Number 9 UCLA traveling to number 10 Oregon. UCLA sitting at 6-0. Oregon sitting at 5-1. We know what Autzen Stadium is and how big this is. 2:30 p.m. Central on Fox. Oregon is a 6-point favorite at home over the Bruins. Coach, what's your takeaway? Well, or what's your thoughts on this game going into Saturday?
It's evenly matched, man. They're both averaging around 42 a game. Uh, they both are averaging over 500 yards a game. It's going to come down to turnovers and who can stay on the field. Um, UCLA, I think, has kind of had some situations where they played in tight games. Oregon, on the other hand, has played in some, but it's been one of those deals of at their spot, they're tough to beat. They're tough to beat. But it's going to come down to who can make the big play and who's going to be able to, and this is going to sound crazy with this matchup, who's going to be able to possess the ball longer. It's going to, and that's crazy to say, but in this situation, who's going to be able to possess the ball longer and do positive things when they have the ball, because that's what it's going to, boil down to.
I agree with you. The quarterback battle for one is going to be amazing. Bo Nix versus Dorian Thompson-Robinson, both over 1,500 yards passing this year, both over 12 touchdowns, both under 3 interceptions this year. But I think the difference comes in Zach Charbonnet is my X factor for them, and it goes kind of into that time of possession. Irving's had a great year for Oregon on the ground, but Charbonnet 600 plus yards, 6 touchdowns. He's been kind of the overlooked piece of this offense, and he's had some big performances in some big games, including against, I believe, Washington. He went for like 200 yards, if I remember right. And then also UCLA is coming off of back-to-back wins over top 15 teams.
Yep.
Utah by 10. They beat Washington by 8. And they get a bye week. Oregon's also coming off one, but Oregon hasn't had a ranked game since BYU on the 17th, and they haven't looked very good since then. And also, that Georgia game still sticks out in my mind about just how inconsistent that they can be. I know it's Georgia, but Georgia has not looked that dominant against many other people this season. Let's just be honest. Missouri took them down to the wire. I trust UCLA's defense coach a little bit more than I do Oregon. So I'm going with the upset here. I think the Bruins pull it out in Autzen. I trust Dorian Thompson-Robinson just a little bit more than Bo Nix. It could be my PTSD from Auburn coming out in me. But give me the Bruins in the 7-point upset this weekend.
You're taking the Bruins. Let me write this down. My thing is and I don't like to use it as people kind of make fun of the kid or whatever, but will Bo Nix, or will Bo Nix be who he's supposed to be? And I think that's the key. All the other pieces that they have can't go without him, to me. And defensively, I think, like you said, UCLA probably has the better of the two. But again, when Oregon's rolling, and who knows what they're going to come out in, that neon or the dark or the silver or the black or the whatever, and that crowd gets rolling, and those guys, I think it's going to be a situation if Bo is who Bo is supposed to be this game, I think they win it by two scores. I said two. Yeah.
So we got a blowout for Oregon on one side. I got UCLA in the close upset. Coach, we're separated by one game in pick'em. I think if I'm not mistaken, you're 10-6. I'm 9-6. It's only because I couldn't pick that Campbell NCCU game because I was covering it that weekend. We got that same situation in one of our FCS games, but you got me by a game right now. I like the difference, and we got another 2:30 game this upcoming weekend, and it is Oklahoma State versus Texas. And this one's huge, man. 2:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. Number 11 Oklahoma State versus Texas. I got this backwards. Oklahoma State is actually the home team, but Texas coming in 5-2, 6.5-point favorite, Coach, over the number 11 team in the country on the road. Yeah. Do you think Texas, rankings wise, it's an upset, but do you think Texas can live up to the betting line hype that they got coming in this weekend?
I don't. And I'm not a huge Polk fan either, because history shows us, or has shown us, Oklahoma State has done this before, and then they get to this part of the season, and then it's an epic trip, a game that they should win. And I'm saying they should win this because they're at home. I'm wondering if someone has the Bluebloods inside tracker on some information that we don't know for Texas to be favored on the road. As I'm looking at this, it's just one of those situations, man, where I just don't know. And Texas is good. I just don't know if they're who they're supposed to be this year, as opposed to if this game is next year. Oh, Texas and a laugher, I would think, just because of the talent that he has there. and then the system they're learning and things like that. Uh, Again, as I'm looking at my notes here, Oklahoma State is averaging more points, uh, more offense. I don't understand. Tell me who's hurt. You know all this
That
insights. Who's hurt?
listen, that not so fast, my friend. I'm rolling with Texas in this one, and there's one name, really two, but one name that matters the most is Quinn Ewers. Back from injury last week, he had a week to kind of get his feet underneath him. Had a great game against Iowa State, and the one thing that concerns me about Oklahoma State coach, and you've known this over the past few seasons, coaching really matters, especially at the coordinator spot. Jim Knowles did so much to build up that Oklahoma State defense. He takes the Ohio State D coordinator job, takes some of that top talent. And this is crazy to me because Texas hasn't had a defense in a long time. Oklahoma State's giving up almost 100 plus more yards per game than
Yeah.
Texas is right now. And they're giving up almost 30 points per game. And the one concern I see, they're giving up 300 plus yards through the air and over 130 yards on the ground. And when you got Quinn Ewers, number one quarterback in the country, finally healthy, coming back, Xavier Worthy at wide receiver, and you got that man. He's a bad man, number 5. Bijan Robinson could be a difference maker on the ground and through the air. I just think Texas has too much offense coming in this weekend. And coach, you know what it's like. Your star player goes down, you go through a little bit of a rough stretch. When he comes back and he's playing at a high level, it rejuvenates both sides of the football. I think Texas goes in confident this weekend, gives Oklahoma State their second straight loss because they lost to TCU last week. Give me the Longhorns and covering. I got them by 7.
I'm not going against you in this. I'm just trying to figure out how Texas became the favorite, because I don't trust Oklahoma State on this stage. Uh, because, like you said, defensively, I think they have been uh, okay, but they have been known to give up a 55 piece and just basically try to outscore you. If it gets into that kind of track meet, Texas wins it going away. But even in a close one, I think Texas, just because of, like you said, number 5, uh, they have that ground game. And if he needs to go in and get 2 or 3 yards, he can definitely do that and grind out the clock. And I'm a coattail you on this one. I'm going Texas.
I like it. The Longhorns for the big win. And then to the FCS level, a game that I'll be at, man, headed out in the morning up there to Chattanooga. Number 11, Mercer at Chattanooga, 6-1 versus 5-1, 12:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus. This is a really and truly what a lot of people are looking at is potentially a SoCon championship matchup. Sanford's still in that race a bit. Furman's not completely out of it. We talked about them, but they do have that loss to Sanford. Coach, who do you like in this one? We got a defensive team versus a just right now a historically great Mercer offense right now for that school's history. Who do you like in this one?
I'm going with Chattanooga. I think their trigger man uh, can handle the flow of what this game needs to be for them to win. I don't think they can handle a shootout. If they can keep it in the 20s, low 30 type stuff, I think he gives them the opportunity. Uh, the only thing that really concerns me is, will they be able to stay on the field? Like you said, Mercer, we know who they are. We've seen them. Defensively, they are pretty good. And can they on the road get Chattanooga into a situation of where they've got to lean on it? And I like Hudson. Uh, I just, I don't know if the defense comes to play and then they don't come to match that, it could get out of hand. But they're the home team, so I'm going to go with them.
I like it. And, I can't predict this one. I'll be there up there with them. I don't want them feeling some type of way. But listen, the one thing that concerns me for Chattanooga is I think they have the defensive line to get pressure and also potentially slow down the rushing attack with Austin Douglas for the Bears. Devontae Maxwell's a monster. Jay Pearson. I mean, the list goes on and on. They got linebackers and D linemen for days over there in Chattanooga. But man, Fred Payton has been playing out of his mind. I mean, this is a guy who last
20,
season was Yeah, I mean, it's just insane. I mean, 1,800 yards, 21 touchdowns. He threw his first pick last week, man, in a 55-33 blowout. Just accidentally threw a pick. It ruined his streak, but man, they're playing outstanding. And then Devron Harper, Todd James might be one of the most electric wide receiving duos in the country. And then also their defense is not bad. Their defense might not be stifling, but they force turnovers when they need to. And that could be a scary defense. Listen, I'd rather have a defense that might give up some yards, but produce points and give me turnovers in opportunistic moments rather than a defense that, potentially could be stifling, but don't force any turnovers because, turnovers change the game. And that's going to be a key. And then I lean forward for Chattanooga as another name to know. 691 on the ground, 7 touchdowns. If he's rolling, it opens up things for Hutchinson in the play action. And I think they're going to need that this weekend against a really talented Mercer team. But coach is rolling with the mocks. I'll be up there. We'll have highlights, full coverage this weekend from Mercer at Chattanooga. And coach, to round out the show, another top 5 matchup, back-to-back weeks. The FCS scheduling has blessed us. And I think, depending on who wins this weekend, we could have a third straight top 5 matchup next weekend to talk about. But Weber State, number 4 in the country, traveling to Montana State, number 3, 2 p.m. Central, ESPN Plus. And this game, it matchup wise, coach, might be the best game of the weekend. You got Weber State's defense, which you've heard me on the show. I think it could be one of the best in the country, versus a rushing attack of Montana State putting up almost 300 yards per game. Coach, who do you like in this huge Big Sky matchup?
I mean, it's tough to go against Dub State uh, a second time, but I have to go against them again just because they're on the road, and like you said, Montana can run the ball. Montana State can run the ball, and that in itself kind of takes away what I think is a strong point of Dub State, which is their secondary. Um, Now, if Dub State can turn this into a situation where they have to pass the ball, I think they probably come out victorious. But the way that Montana State rushes the ball, man, I think just puts a lot of pressure on Weber State's offense to every time they have it to say, hey, we've got to get points. And if Montana State can get up early, say 10 points, then that's going to cause Weber to, Dub State to press. And I think Montana State has the edge slightly because they can run it, and then just a little bit more because they're at the house.
It's tough to go up into Bozeman and win a game, but man, there's a feeling to me about Weber that this could be a really special year for them. And the quarterback situation for Montana State is so interesting because, coach, I don't know how you feel about it. Tommy Mellott leads you to a national title appearance last year, gets hurt. Sean
Yep.
Chambers comes in and in like 4 games rushes for 600 yards and 16 touchdowns at the quarterback spot, leads the country by like 6 touchdowns. How do you put him to the bench?
That I don't know. And it's kind of like we talked about with the Penn State situation. Um, if you pushed all your chips to the middle and the team knows this is what it is, I think, that's the move you make. But that would have been tough to do at that point because the numbers that he had put up, and you were rolling, at that point, it's got to be a coin flip, or you just got to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Because the numbers that young man put up in that amount of time, can you imagine if he kept the whole season, if he stayed the whole season?
Yeah.
But I think it'll be a situation where any signs of trouble, if they don't make that change, there's going to be a couple young men that are looking at the guys in college shirts like, what are we doing? If they fall behind, that's why I say that's a fine line and a very, very touchy situation that, you've got to control at practice, in the team room, and the whole nine, because it could turn on you. It could really turn on you.
Yeah, and Willie Patterson versus the secondary at Weber State is going to be a matchup that I'm just excited to see. Willie Patterson has done amazing things. You got Maxwell Anderson, 5 picks this year, 5 pass breakups, and all conference guy, and Eddie Heckard coming back, 1 interception, 6 pass breakups. It's just Weber State might not have the best offense. I'll concede that, but it's just they always seem to have explosive plays at the right time. Whether it's Todd McPherson at wide receiver, whether it's one of the running backs, whether it's Bronson making a play when they need to. They got a top 10 defense. They're allowing less than 12 points per game, and the rushing defense has been there for them. It's just when you got Tommy Millott, when you got Sean Chambers, when you got Elijah Elliott rolling, Lane Sumner coming up, and then also Isaiah Afonso, their All-American running back. We talked about him in the Eastern Washington matchup. Finally practicing. Will we see him suit up this weekend for the Bobcats? He's a game changer. But for me, there's still too many question marks, man. I just have a feeling about Weber. Give me Weber in the upset this weekend. We disagreed on all the games this weekend, but I just trust Weber's
Yep.
defense to make the plays when they need to get the win to get to 7-0.
Somebody's going to be up. Somebody's
A
going to
lot. Yeah.
be.
Someone's going to be up greatly, man. But, Coach, another week of the Coach's Corner. You guys got a big matchup this weekend. Homecoming, too. Man, how you guys feeling going into the game quickly as we end the show?
Man, we had a great week of practice. The guys came back, the bounce, the feeling, the excitement itself, because it is homecoming. A lot of former players have called saying they're coming back, which has, the guys that are on the team, man, has those guys really excited to see the guys that not that they played with last year, but the guys that they played with when they first came in 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And since I've been here, this is the first time that I can remember so many of the past alumni calling saying, "Hey, Coach, I'm coming, I'm coming." So we hope that gives them a little more, motivation to go out and play to their full potential. And, it's going to be a big game for us, not just because it's a conference game, but it's the next game. And, that's the thing that we preach around here. Every game's a big game because it's your next game. And this one here just has a little bit more spice to it. So, really looking forward to it. My boy G, shout out to G, if you don't mind. I know we don't really do shout outs here, but G, we got you back, brother. We got you back, man. We're going to pick it back up for you.
Yeah, he had a long week this week on social media. Y'all, he took it on the chin though, man. He's such a good sport though. Not many people could take the beating that he has on social media, man. But it's a big week across the board. Listen, me and Coach will be back next week with the Week 9 Coaches Corner, give some recaps, preview some of the biggest games, and next week we could have a special guest episode, man. We'll keep y'all updated on that. But stay tuned. We got a lot of stuff coming this offseason. But listen, for Coach Fred, for myself, and the Blue Bloods, we are out for right now.